we go. Welcome to the live stream. All right, we're going to try and clear up all the keeper issues right now and hopefully put everyone at ease about the keeper system. So I am going to, first of all, let me just put I'm going to put the stream on in case anyone wants to jump on. I'm going to make that possible. Okay, let me share the stream. Okay, let me share the stream. All right, so we got that going. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to just go over the rules here. So let's get to our overview of the rules. So here we see it. Keeper eligible players will now be drafted in rounds 11 to 16 or undrafted free agents. A free agent, so that's who's eligible. You got to be round 11 to 16 or an undrafted free agent. A free agent who is on injured reserve at the time of the draft is ineligible as a keeper. So if they're on IR at draft day, they're not eligible to be a keeper. If they're suspended for the season, they are not eligible as a keeper. Let me go back to that. Let me go back. Kickers and defenses are not eligible. Each team, and this is the key thing, each team has one keeper contract per season. So every season you receive one new contract. So if you already have one keeper on your roster coming into this offseason, you still keep that player. But now for this offseason that we're in right now, you get to you have one new contract to designate another player. So that's how that goes. Let's go back. If a keeper is dropped, his keeper contract is voided. So you do not retain the contract. That's it. So we had a great question from Team Fabs during the earlier call where he said, hey, I dropped Kirk Cousins. Is his contract voided with him? Yes. Even if you pick him up again. So for example, I have James Cook as a keeper right now on my roster. And I also have Devin Achane, who I want to designate as a keeper for this coming season for my 23 roster. If I was to drop James Cook last season, if I dropped him last season, I picked him up again. I was able to drop him and pick him up again. Now, right now, this offseason, I can only award a keeper contract to either Cook or Achane. I can't keep them both anymore. You drop him, the contract is voided. That's it. So I can still have him. If I want to keep him, I have to spend another contract on him. So, which means I could not get Achane this year, right? Because I only get one new contract each season. So I see we got people on. If you have questions, throw them in the chat right now. This is obviously being recorded on the channel, but throw your questions in the chat. Continuing with the rules, let's get back to it. So I went over all these rules already. Let's see. We have a question in the chat. Job is in the house. All right. Yes, sir. So I see. So Sugar Graham sent me the question of who's eligible from his roster to be drafted. This answers that. It's a player from rounds 11 to 16 or an undrafted free agent. It cannot be a kicker. It cannot be a defense. If a keeper pick is a draft pick, his contract escalates one round for each season. So again, I give the example of Michael Pittman. He was a 10th round pick when I drafted him. This is his third year as a keeper. So he cost me 3 rounds. So I take 10 minus the 7, minus 3, and I get to 7. If you have an undrafted free agent who's a keeper, he's automatically starts as a 12th round salary. His first season as your keeper, he will have a 12th round salary. Let's go back to the rules here. Let's see here. Let me open something up. I think I have another question on texts. Let me see. Curtis asked, can I select anyone that I drafted last year regardless of the round? So it's basically the same question that Graham asked. And so the answer, of course, is no. It's around 11-16. So let's continue with the rest of the rules, or undrafted free agent. The keeper contract can be traded with the keeper. So if you have a player who is a keeper eligible, like I have James Cook, I can trade him and his keeper contract goes with him. And if I trade Achane, so if I designate Achane and I trade him, that's it. That's my keeper for this season is gone. I've chosen to give it to somebody else. Let's see. Finishing up. The last thing is if by chance you have two players with the same keeper salary. So say you had an undrafted free agent who would be a 12th round pick. They would cost you a 12th round pick, but you also happen to trade somebody for their keeper who's a 12th round pick, right? So you're taking their keeper contract, you've acquired a keeper contract, but you also have your own keeper contract to award. So how do you play that out? One of those players has to go one round higher. So when it comes time for drafting the next year, one of those players is going to cost you an 11th round pick. The other player will cost you the 12th round pick. And the max contract you can acquire via trade in a season is 2. So in theory, in one season, you could acquire 3 new keeper players. 1 from the contract, so you're awarding someone who's already on your roster pre-draft. You're designating someone from your current roster as your one keeper contract. But then you could make trades and get 2 more during the season. So you come out of the season with 3 total keepers. Yes, that's very possible. In theory, are people going to trade to their keepers? That's a whole different story, but it can be done. And those are the main rules. So again, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. I think I'm going to share my screen next. And the last thing I'll do is I'll just do a walkthrough through the matrix. So let me share my screen and bring this up. Okay, so here we have, of course, the keeper matrix. And as you can see here, let's just go back. Let me shrink it a little bit, actually. So as you can see, here's all our teams. And I put the color here is their cost. So going back to the 2021 keepers, I'm just going to stick with the simple example of Michael Pittman, right? So I drafted him in 2021. Then after the season, he's my keeper. So he's my 21 keeper. He is now coded orange. Why? Because this is his 3rd year as a keeper. I had him in 22, 23. Now we're going to 24. This is his 3rd season as my keeper. He now cost me 3 rounds. So when I draft this year, I will not have a 7th round pick because Michael Pittman will be my 7th round pick. Then we have James Cook. He's in his 2nd year as a keeper. He's going to cost 2 rounds. So he will cost me a 10th round pick this year. And then we have Devon Achane, who is a free agent. He will cost me a 12th round pick. So I will have a 7th, a 10th, and a 12th. Those were all, I will not be drafting in those rounds in the draft this year. Those will all be keeper designated picks. And it's the same thing. And so you can see the people here in blue, for example, Joe with Cam Akers, he dropped him. So blue means ineligible. Kirk Cousins, I mentioned that before, Team Fabs, dropped. And then if you just don't have a keeper that year, it's just blank. That's what that means. So that's how it's shaking out. So those are all the rules. Again, if you have questions, text me, email me. But, it's pretty straightforward. So you can only pick one person from your roster this year, rounds 11-16, or undrafted free agent to be your keeper. And if you have keepers from prior years, so let me just give one more example. Here's Inglorious Bastards. He has Dalton Schultz and he has Samaje Perine, who have been his keepers, who are on his roster. So he can keep both of these players and still designate a keeper from his roster right now with his one new contract. Who else can do that? So can Team DNA. So Team DNA, Black Ops, and Inglorious Bastards are the only teams who could have 3 keepers entering draft night because we've kept them each year. You can look at P Unit. He had Debo, who's still on his roster. It's going to cost him 3 rounds. That'll be a 7th round pick. He did not designate a 22 keeper. So he can only have, entering the draft, Debo and whoever he uses his new contract on from his current roster, rounds 11, 16, or undrafted free agent this year. So that's it. So I see we have a couple people watching. If you have questions, post it now because I'm about to wrap this up. Do you have a question? Are we clear? Are we good? Again, I'm extending it to tomorrow night. I really want to wrap it up because I want to clear the roster so people can load up their queue in the draft room. Because the queue right now, you can't load up players who are owned by other players. So I'll be able to reset it tomorrow with the keepers. And so it'll just be like, everything will be fully accurate. So tomorrow, Tuesday, August 20th, 11:59 p.m. Eastern time, we're wrapping it up. I'm locking it down. Rosters are in, and we're good to go. We're off to the races. We'll have our rosters will be set. Keepers will be there, and it'll just be all good. So last call for questions. I'll wait 10 seconds. If you have a question, please type in the chat. I'm happy to answer it. Any questions? There are no dumb questions. And that's it. So I think it's going to be fun. I like it. And I think here's my prediction. I think it's going to bring a lot of intrigue now to the draft. Now that people are really catching on to the power of having keepers, I think it's going to bring a lot of intrigue to how the draft plays out. That's my prediction. I think our draft's going to go a little differently from here on out. So if there are no further questions, thanks everyone for watching. Obviously, this will be up on the YouTube page, so there's nothing to worry about. And see you on the grid.